Welcome back for another episode of Sunday SoulDay, fueling your mind, body, and soul with soulful conversations and life-changing insights. Today I sit down with Douglas White, former MLB pitching coach for the Angels and Astros with 17 years across 4 organizations with 4 championship wins, including 2 World Series titles. Today, Doug brings the same championship mindset into personal development, helping people harness the power of their mindset and emotions to intentionally create the lives that they desire. Let's welcome him to the show. Welcome to Sunday SoulDay, Douglas.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming on and also responding to my Threads post, which was so cool. I was so amazed at the response of the thread post, but thank you so much for responding. And I couldn't wait for our conversation.
Yeah.
Before we dive into transitions, which is such a common human denominator, I want to just give the audience a little color of your background. So
Yeah.
take us through your background a little bit because you have such a cool background.
Yeah. Well, the gist of it is that I spent 17 years in professional baseball as a coach, from like the ages of 25 to I think it was like 42. And my deal was I always wanted to make it to the big leagues. And my path was based on my emotional awareness because I didn't have the playing background. Like I didn't have the name. I was fortunate enough to have met some human beings along the way where they knew that quality information was at the forefront of coaching and that your name or your playing, prowess was not necessarily meaning that you're a quality coach, right? So I was able to get into some of those systems where that's what they were drawing, that's what they wanted to bring in. And so I went my many years of beating myself against the wall, running into walls of like trying to move up and trying to move up, and then eventually I was able to tap into something that, hey, okay, I got it. I picked up my momentum. I knew who I was. I knew where I was headed, and in a very short time, then I made it to the big leagues. In 2019, that was my last year. I got fired after my first year of actually being a major league pitching coach. I worked 17 years to be a major league pitching coach. I signed a 3-year deal. And at the end of that year, not the GM who hired me actually, but the owner was like, hey, we're going to move on. And that's a whole nother story, we could get into. But from that time, I was like, okay, I had to drop an identity. I had to totally restructure my life. I had to reimagine things, re-identify things, so on and so forth. And so I went through a loop, man. Like I went through it. I thought I knew it all. I thought I knew how to process things. I thought I knew how to put everything in line. And that wasn't it. And so once I finally was like, hey, you're on the hamster wheel, man, and things aren't changing. I finally reached out to a friend and she said, hey, I got someone for you. And that started my journey into ceremonies, into medicine. And so I did some MDMA journeys. I did a San Pedro journey. And that, without a doubt, I don't want to say lessons learned, but the insights that I pulled from it and then started to practice and integrate in my life finally got me out of the hamster wheel where now I'm in this position where I have my own business. I do coaching. I do emotional awareness coaching for athletes, for human beings, really in general. And then I also started a company called Soul Integrated Athletics, and that's in the works. I wanted to create a platform for organizations to help athletes use emotional well-being with performance. And I'm trying to make it to where it's actually you can have emotional analytics. So teams understand your emotional well-being matters. That if you feel better, if you're able to handle your life, if you're able to handle your emotions, you'll be able to perform on and off the field. And so that's that project that I have going as well. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. First of all, love that you're working on that because it is so crucial for athletes. And I think
Yeah.
it's such a missed thing that we don't focus on as an athlete.
Yes.
I'm a former athlete, track and field athlete, earned a scholarship to UCLA. And so I
Beautiful.
understand, how important that is. And when it's out of the equation, how detrimental it can be, especially when you're going through those transitions. And so, like, it's such a common human experience, having transitions throughout your life. Some are small, some are really big, and some take us down, like what was that transition like for you? Like that emotional landscape, like as you stepped away from your career,
Yeah.
being a coach in professional baseball, like for so many, I mean, like a huge part of your life, and
Yeah.
then you probably even played sports as,
Yes.
a younger person. So, like, what was that transition like that moved you into personal development coaching?
Yeah. So first off, I always felt like uh, mm, I was always going to be doing something more. Like the emotional awareness game for me is like it's a bigger game because it can reach and touch more people, you know? And I feel like there's so many misunderstandings out there this day, misinformation and such, and things can be more simple and things can be more clear, and you absolutely can live an amazing, happy ever after type life. But there are some things that you do want to get in touch with along the path for this to happen, you know? So for me, I got thrown right into it because when I was using emotional awareness to create my career in baseball, I was using it for that. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't outside of baseball, I was in baseball, and my sole focus was get to the big leagues, right? And so when baseball was done, when I chose to walk away, I quickly realized, oh wow, yes, I have emotional awareness in the way of I'm gonna go get this thing. But outside of that thing was a whole nother universe, a whole nother thing. And so I had to basically re-educate myself vibrationally, energetically, emotionally to what was going on because I didn't really get it. I didn't understand it. And so, like I said earlier, once I started to do those ceremonies, that medicine, man, I'm telling you, the medicine spoke to me in ways where it brought me full circle. So all the things I learned from 19 to 42 before I was done with baseball, I rewrote them this past 365. I literally rewrote them. They're in journal books. And it was all like a re-understanding of what I knew. But but like, how is it now? Like, how is it working for me now? And so the transition is it's like, well, what do you want to take a look at? Do you care enough about yourself and your life to take a look at? Are you okay with feeling all the feels? Are you okay with not knowing what the heck and why do I feel this way? And why is it coming up so often? And all these things that you're going to do in the transition world, right? And so it was just one of those things that for me, I knew I had to do it because this is my calling. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. So that helps me in my life, then relay it to other people.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I think that's the thing. It's like whenever a transition happens, whether it's your own choice or involuntary, right? Like you go through this moment where there's like a grief that happens, and sometimes people don't even give themselves permission to label it that, especially
Mhm.
people who maybe like lose a job, right? Like they
Yes.
don't even realize they're grieving,
Yes.
what could have been, but what didn't happen, and then all
Yes.
that are lost,
Yes.
and then it's like giving yourself permission to rewrite your world. You
Yes.
And I love that you took time to look inward.
Mm.
I think a lot of times people are always looking externally, and that's what makes it such a difficult transition. But if you start with yourself, what do I even want? Like, what am I going to allow myself to feel the feels? All the things you said, like it's so important when you're going through that transition. So I love that you touched on that.
Yeah. So you bring up something amazing there because the grief part is huge.
Yeah.
And you said even we let's say choose to go into transition voluntarily or involuntarily, right? It's for me, it's always voluntary. It's just whether you were conscious of it or not. So it's like I got fired, but it wasn't because I was a bad coach. It wasn't because I didn't belong. It was because that space wasn't for me any longer. I chose not to go back. And so I did have this battle as a human being of, oh no, but what does this mean about me? Because there's two different things going on at all times. There's this vibrational reality of, no, 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 this is exactly what's supposed to be going on. This is how this is going to work out. This is that path, right? But in our human brain, we think, wait, 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 no, 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 I got fired. That means I'm not worthy. That means I'm not good enough. That means, whatever story you want to put to that. Where actually, when you take a step back, that's exactly what I wanted to have happen because I would have never stepped away on my own. I would have never quit. And so I needed that to take place. And the reason, one of the reasons why I know this is I'll tell you a quick story. 2 weeks before the season was done, I was driving back to my home from the stadium. And I just had this thought come up. And the thought was, man, I don't think I'm going to be back here next year. And I had that thought. And then right after the thought, I had 30 seconds of the chills, just that amazing feeling running through your body. So I knew for sure, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be back next year. I wonder how this is going to shake out. But then, time goes by and you don't think about it, right? But so when I got the call, that's not a surprise, but I didn't know how it was going to go down. I thought for sure I'm going back. And so just again, life plays out how it plays out, but you're always a part of it. You're never a victim to circumstance. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that. And I had a conversation about this, and I think like it's really moving out of the victim mindset, right? Like where when something happens, like, they decided to part ways with you, or
Yes.
whatever the situation was. And, it's like it's so easy to go into a victim mentality, you know,
Hmm.
and it happens so often, but when you understand that it was actually done to you for you.
Yes.
Like that's when you take your power back.
Yes. The most amazing thing about our life is that our life experience is showing us everything.
Everything. Yeah.
You literally have the answers to all the questions you ever have in life if you pay attention to your physical reality. The other thing with that is if you want to take it a step before, like back it up a little bit, if you understand how you're feeling, you may not have to run into all those physical manifestations to then show you. If you're paying attention to how you feel prior, you actually might be able to catch it before it even shows up. If you want to, you don't ever have to, it doesn't matter. But then if you don't pay attention to your actual physical life experience, then yes, like I said, like I was in my loop for 5 years. You're going to continue in a loop. It's just the way it works. It's based on law of attraction. It's just how life rolls. Yeah.
Well, and also too, it's like the difference between living and existing, and I think a lot of times we're just existing and going
Mm,
with the flow of what's familiar and not really actively living and being
mm,
intentional and being, like making sure we're vibrationally aligned to the things that we're doing.
mm.
And so love that you talked about that. Like tell me, because you've coached at the highest level, won
Sure.
championships, led, major organizational changes, like done so many things in your career. Like, what part of your coaching philosophy has stayed with you, like
Mm.
beyond the field?
Yeah, so the thing I try to do the most is be as honest and forthright to the players as possible. There's so much deceit, there's so much negativity going on inside that environment. And for what it is, like for what it's worth, like a good thing, bad thing, like who cares? It's just more about how I chose to show up. So I wanted to make sure inside the system that I ran that guys weren't being confused and getting information from all over the place. I wanted them to know, hey, this is where you stand. This is why you stand there. This is how you can get to where you want to go. Your choice. But we would have those meetings constantly with the guys. And so I just never wanted a player because I felt like, man, if I was playing and I'm in the middle of nowhere and nobody's watching me and I feel like 3 million miles away from the big leagues, how am I going to know that I'm worth anything and that I'm going to be able to get to where I want to go? And so I wanted to make sure guys knew, hey, this is where you stand, this is what's going on, this is how you can get there. And then it's up to you to make your own decisions.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a great coaching philosophy because you have to understand where you currently stand and then the steps that you need to take to get to
Yeah,
wherever you're trying to go, you
yeah,
know. But more
exactly.
importantly, you need to understand where you want to go or what that larger goal is. So I love that
Exactly. Yeah.
philosophy. Like, pitching is so physical, like, but your work really focuses on the internal game.
Yeah.
Like, how did your interests and emotions and inner guidance evolve, like from your time in sports to now?
Oh, I mean, that's a great question because what I was just thinking when you were saying that is when I was 25 years old, that about 24, 25 was my first professional coaching job with the Montreal Expos in the rookie league. And I was so locked in on mechanics, 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 delivery, delivery, delivery. Like, if you don't have the delivery, you can't. And I'm like listening myself as the years go by, and I'm like, okay, I know for sure that's not it because if you look at the big leagues, there's a lot of different deliveries going on in a lot of different ways, and they still figure out how to get people out. And so just the years kept going and the years kept going, and I'm starting to figure this thing out. Like, man, this is way more about who's the individual and how they believe about themselves. Do they know that that's them? The big league jersey is theirs. It's just a matter of time that they until they put it on their back. But that's who they are, and that's who they be, and so that's what they get. So it's not. This is not rocket science. But if you don't have a belief system for yourself, behind yourself, with yourself, then this is going to be happening in confusion and overwhelm and deceit and resentment and hatred. All that stuff's going to start coming up because you don't understand where you're at with the way you think and feel about yourself because you're always the center of your universe. Doesn't happen any other way. We're all living like that. We're all the center of our own universes. And so you really do want to be your engine. You want to feel what your engine is and how your engine's running. And so that's what we would discuss and such.
And it's so true. We are our own universes, our little mini universes. And I think like we forget that,
Yeah.
because we're constantly giving our power away to so many external things,
Yes.
and even like I feel like people when they're not grounded, in that, emotional kind of inner work, like
Mhm.
they're in competition with others and not with themselves. They're constantly comparing themselves to others. Like
Yes.
it's so important, going back to what you were saying is like knowing where you are
Yes.
and then knowing where you're trying to go,
Yes.
so love,
Yes. Yeah,
love
I,
that.
I I think a lot of times in life again with the misunderstandings, if you're watching TV and you're watching these athletes, you might hear a 1 minute snippet or a 2 minute snippet, and so then you think that's what it is, and that's what's going on, and it's like, and then you practice that, and you know what I mean? You're running in the hamster wheel just like everybody else is, wondering why this is not working out for you. And it's because that's not what the person truly thinks or feels about themselves. You just pulled out a minute snippet. And so it's a very interesting thing. And even sometimes people, the way they speak about themselves, that's really not how they feel inside either. And so that's again how it can get very confusing in life when you try to, let's say, project your life off of somebody else's. You just can't do that. I would suggest against it, You got to get in touch with yourself as best you can.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's what that, deep kind of reflection and spending time with yourself and really learning yourself,
Mhm.
and then giving yourself permission to evolve beyond that. Because, who we were in our 20s, we're both in our 40s, it's like I don't want to say it's night and day, but it's definitely an evolved version, and I
Yes.
gave myself permission to allow that growth to come through,
Yes.
and so I think that's important too, just to note for the audience,
Without
um
a doubt.
Talk to me a little bit about, what you learned about leadership, especially under pressure, because I think like this is what's so fascinating about athletes to me, and also being an athlete myself. I can handle a tremendous amount of pressure.
Mm,
And I have this term that I call PUP, where it's practicing under pressure.
mm,
And I'm like constantly putting myself into those pressure cooker situations, like
hmm.
throughout my entire career, from being an athlete to when I worked in tech, like where I would set like tremendous like goals, that were way above what the organization wanted, but
Wow.
that's the level of pressure that I like to put myself under, right? And then I would perform under it, and then, not to, you know, be arrogant, but I would succeed, So
Sure, sure.
like, but
Sure.
it's the truth,
Yeah.
and so but it all stemmed from watching my father, who played sport.
Mm,
He was a football player,
mm.
and also like myself, my athletics. So I'm always so curious, like, what did you learn about leadership, like especially under pressure, working for teams like the Astros and the Angels?
Well, actually, I want to real quickly pull back from what you just said about pressure, because this is a perfect example of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
When you say the word pressure, it feels to me like you're energized, like it comes out of you and you're like, I cannot wait for
Yes,
you to challenge me with whatever it is you got, right?
exactly.
So for you, pressure is a more than word. It's not a less than feeling word. But that's where people get twisted on this, right? Because for most people, when you say pressure, it goes, oh no, here we go. I don't want any of that. Please, you're asking me to do something. I can't make a decision, and so on and so forth. And so when you get into sports, when you get into athletics, there's people that thrive on pressure and that there's people that run from pressure. And that's not a good or bad thing. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's just that's how some people feel about those things. So I just wanted to just add that real quick because you brought up a beautiful word because pressure is an amazing word, and the way you use it is it can control you or you can thrive with it. Yeah. But as far as leadership, for me, I learned really quickly in professional sports that if you want to create a relationship with a player, you have to speak with them, not at them. And I was thinking as a young coach, because I didn't know myself, I didn't play at a high level, I played indie ball. So I didn't really get as a coach. There's no discipline going on in professional sports as a coach. You're not telling somebody who's making multi-million dollars as a coach, you're not telling them what to do. You're making suggestions. You're hoping you can guide them. But if you don't have trust, if you don't have a relationship where there's a give and a take, let's say there's a communication flow, then you don't have anything. And so I quickly learned that because I was a disciplinarian of sorts at first as a coach. And I realized, like I said, really quickly, this is not going to work. And so I noticed other coaches that had quality relationships with their players. And I was like, oh, I like what he's doing. Oh, I like what he's doing. Okay, I'm going to pull from that. And I think that's the route I need to start going. And then eventually I just got comfortable in my own skin. I knew where I was. I believed in myself, where, yeah, I could speak to them that way. But that took a little bit. That took a few years for me, and it was a little confusing. It was hard for me to go through, but I'm very happy that I took the time to notice it.
Well, and you mentioned such an important word, trust, in any relationship, especially one of a coach, where so many things come up, as you're coaching people, because I talk about, whenever I was running teams, like I would coach the whole person,
Mm,
and not just the function of that person, like, and get to know them personally and build that trust and rapport, and understand like what did they even want, like what got them excited, what got them
mm,
energized about the job, but then outside of the job, like what are some things that you enjoy outside of the job, and then let's hone in on that, like let's do some, make sure we're carving out time in our week to
mm,
focus on those things, but I think that's how you build the trust, and then also too, in those, and I mentioned pressure earlier because it's in those pressure situations
Mm,
that when you show up, you build trust too.
mm,
When they see that, okay, he's got my back
mm.
in those like pressure situations. So
Yeah.
that's why I was curious, as I
Yeah.
can imagine, at that level, there's so many incredible highs, championships, but then also some incredible low points
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Well, what I was gonna say is like for the work I do now, like for example, we do a Sunday group Zoom call. I have a group of athletes that are in a remote pitching program, right? And so there's like 45, 50 guys on the roster, and like 15 to 20 show up every Sunday, right? And we have these conversations, and it's all about emotional awareness, right? And it's amazing to me, and I didn't realize this as much when I was in baseball, but it's amazing to me how now I realize, wow, everybody here is hurting in some way, shape, or form. There's not one person that's, well, not only in this world, but obviously in athletics, because there's such a grind going on inside of that. So you have these young kids. They may not have the parental support. They may not have the community support. Who knows how the organization is treating them? And they're fighting for their lives to create a goal or a dream to get somewhere. And I'm like, oh my God, if I'm not this person's support system, what do they have? And so I quickly like, wow, this is a really different light in which I now look at this profession from. And that's part of the reason why I moved into it, because I started realizing, man, the physical aspect is great, no problem at all. I understand. You have to be, you have to have a physical nature to do any sport. I get that. But you can get that from many, many people inside the organization or outside and so on and so forth. I don't know how many people are ready to hold space and create that emotional atmosphere, just like you said, for an athlete that's going through a tough time and may feel like they're falling through the ground, you know? And so I totally agree with you on that one, man. Man, they need support, and they don't know how to ask for help
no,
because
well,
they think
but
it's a
they're also
weakness.
not taught to do that, right? Like in that's it goes back to like giving yourself permission. But if no one has created the space for you, you
How would
know,
you know?
how would you know? But then also too, it's like a lot of times people don't even trust themselves to be vulnerable because they don't think that they're in a safe space because maybe the last time they showed
Mm,
vulnerability, that was deemed a weakness. And
perfect.
so it's like it's so many things. So I'm like, we're all dealing with stuff. Like first and foremost, I wear this hat all the time. My
Mhm.
audience is probably so sick of me wearing it, but it's like it's just to be kind because I'm
Yes,
like, know the things that people hold really deep inside that they don't let show, and they're holding it in there and it comes out in ways that even sometimes unexpected for them. Athletes are taught to remove their emotions. I don't think people, unless they're athletes, they understand. They're taught to remove their emotions from, minus you getting upset or getting excited.
sure,
It's like
sure, sure.
any other emotions, it's like
Yeah,
that's gonna hold you back, like, during your game.
I
So
couldn't agree with you more.
so it's
Yeah,
like they're so used to burying emotions, and so having someone create a space where they can, open up is just it's so beautiful. So I love that you're doing that work.
yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, the one of the best things is like we're taking it where, just like you said, instead of pushing them away, your emotions, so on and so forth. It's like, no, no, no. Actually, that's what we're leading with. That's actually your most powerful place. If you understand how you feel, you have that emotional sensitivity, because all the emotions that are coming in, they're all information. They're all guidance. None of it is against you. None of it is attacking you. None of it is a judgment of you. None of it is to make you wrong. And so when we can just that little switch in their brain about that, they go, oh, thank God you just said that. Now I don't have to feel this way about me anymore. Now, of course, you still have to create habits. You still have to practice it, because if you've been doing it for 20 years, it doesn't mean like tomorrow all of a sudden you're like,
Which,
I
yeah.
got it, I got it. It's like we still got to do the work, but now we know where we're headed and we know the foundation that we're standing on. And so it can get as shaky as you want. You're still standing on the same foundation.
But it's so powerful, that you're helping athletes do that because it's such a, I don't think they understand like that's how they harness their power. You
Mm.
know, being able to not only feel their feels, but then use those feelings in a way, that
Yes.
serves them, you know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
love that.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell me, because, just for our audience, like what's kind of a common emotional pattern that you've seen, with high performing athletes and then
Mm.
the folks that you're coaching today?
Yeah. I think most of it is denial. I think, to be honest with you, it's just quite frank. I just think like, and this is true for everybody who's living, okay? But it's just so prevalent for athletes because they feel, and it's true, they feel there's so much at stake. Okay. So what the athletes are doing is holding on for dear life to their current existence, meaning their belief, their belief patterns, their habits, these things, right? Not realizing that you're an evolutionary being, like you are evolving all day, every day. And if you don't take your expansion, this is why you feel this way. This is why the injuries come up. This is why the down streaks come, or whatever you want to call it, right? If you can keep up with your expansion and you can see life experience for what it is, you can keep up and you can have a fairly smooth ride if that makes any sense, for being an athlete. But a lot of them, nope, 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 can't do that. Nope, 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 can't do that because, well, wait a minute, I just went 0 for 3 because of what you said, or I just went da 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 for what you said, and it's like yes, yes, and it's a long-term game. So you're trying to make a change so that you could stay around for 5 to 10 years, not the next month. But these athletes think that every night I'm holding on for dear life. And some of them might be. I get that too. But then when do you want to start doing the work? When you got released? When you're 2 years out of the game? Like, I don't know. You got to make that decision. But sooner or later, your life experience is literally telling you sooner or later, you got to choose something different. You can't keep going about it the way you are. And that's sometimes a very, very interesting conversation to have with an athlete that again has so much at stake and they may be supporting their family. That's a different beast right there.
Well, and it's difficult too, right? To make those shifts because they've been practicing, a certain way for so many years that
Yes.
it's difficult to make that shift. But,
Yeah.
you know, I love that you touch on this. The choice is theirs, to make. And that's again, they're owning their power, like
Yeah.
they get to choose when that pivot happens, you know,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
it is important to finally make that pivot,
Yeah.
but they get to decide when that happens. Like, speaking of that, like one thing I'm so curious about, because I love this conversation, by the way, and just for our audience who might be in like, maybe a major life pivot, or maybe they're an athlete as well listening in, or even maybe a career pivot. Like, what's one question that they can ask themselves today?
Mm. Man, that's a big question right there. I guess the thing I would probably say for the immediacy of it is just how do I feel? I just think so many people are not truly aware of how they feel. Just like we were talking about earlier with grief. I'm first one to tell you, I did not know I needed to grieve. I didn't know how. I didn't know what it was. I thought I was dealing with my emotions. I thought I was processing them. I wasn't aware that I didn't get down deep enough. So it's kind of like, if you have an infection in your body, if you don't go deep enough and cut out all the infection, it will keep coming back. You can clean it as much as you want, you could sew it up, you could stitch it, so on and so forth. You didn't get all the infection. You got to go back in. You got to get it out. And so I didn't understand that. I do now. That's, what I've been doing over these past 365 days plus. And so I think that's the first and foremost. How do you feel? And you literally can just start with right now. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go and live your last 20 years. You could just go right here, right now. How do I feel? Okay, cool. Now you start with that awareness game, that observation game of at least I can be in touch with how I feel so I can respond and or decide from there. But if you're making decisions where you're fooling yourself of how you feel, none of those decisions are going to work or last very long because they're not where you're standing. It's not really how you feel. So that would be probably the most important question I'd ask myself.
Love that. And I put only a couple extra words in there, but I say, you know, tell the truth. How do you feel?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like,
Like don't lie to me. Don't
yeah,
lie to
and don't
yourself.
lie to yourself, you know,
Yeah.
like you don't have to tell me, like tell
Yeah.
yourself right,
Exactly.
right now, how do you feel? You
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah.
and then start there, you know, and
Yes.
I think that's such a great starting point. And then maybe if you want to go back and look at, you know, past
Sure.
experiences, you know, and then even like what scares you is my next one, you know, like
Mhm.
what fears are you feeling right now? You know, so I think those are really important questions, you know, to ask.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, this is just awesome. Tell me, like, who do you coach? Like, who's your ideal client? You know, I know you're working with baseball players and stuff, but if
Yeah.
someone's
Yeah.
listening,
So my ideal client is not necessarily what they do, but where they are. I think my ideal client is that the one who's in the in between, in the gap, where and it doesn't matter like if you are in an amazing career, you're starting a career, like wherever you are in that line, it doesn't matter. You just know you're in that place of where I'm at right now is fine, or maybe it's not, either way. But I know what I'm doing is not gonna work for me anymore. Or I don't know, but I'm gonna know here soon enough, right? I'm your coach to get you to that next place to fill in that gap. Because what I'm giving you is the actual energy of what's going on, the vibration of what's going on. It's not smoke and mirrors. It's not follow these steps. It's not outside of yourself. I coach you to know what's best for you. I'm not supposed to tell you anything. You know what I mean? If you're listening to a coach and they're telling you what to do, you should probably get a new coach because what's good is that going to do you? You know? And so I'm trying to guide people back to themselves, back to their source, back to their soul, back to their spirit, because that's how you're getting your downloads, anyways. Yeah.
being able to hear yourself and trust yourself again.
Oh
And that
man.
is like my biggest thing with coaching. It's like I want people that work with me to be able to trust themselves,
Mm,
hear themselves,
mm.
higher power, whoever they call their higher
Sure.
power, you know,
Sure.
like whatever their belief system is, but being able to really be in tune with that. And the only way to do that is to really clean off your inner mirror so
Mm.
that you can see again. It's in the gap. I love that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. Like
Awesome.
while you're taking care of clients and doing all the things that you're doing, like how do you fuel yourself back up? You know, I imagine this work is very energizing for you, but how do you
Yes.
take care of yourself? You know, mind, body, soul.
So that's a really good question because I've cleared off the cobwebs. I've cleared off most all the layers. Like I've done that work, okay? And what has come from that is one main thing, how I treat myself, meaning how I speak to myself. And what goes on for me is I have this old system running of you're not enough. And it could be you're not enough in the food you eat. You're not enough in you're not doing enough. You're not speaking enough. You're not learning enough. You're not writing enough. Like whatever the deal is, it's not enough. And so for me, the main deal for me is to realize that's an old system. I am absolutely positively enough. I always have been. I always will be. But to feel that viscerally compared to saying those words, two completely different things. And so I've finally gotten to the place of the visceral connection to I am enough. And I was thinking about that word this morning, enough, because I think it's so easy to slip into I am not enough. Like I'm not even enough. Like to me, because to me, enough is like, if you're at this line right here, right? Like you're underwater. But now enough is okay, I like my eyes just went over the water and I can breathe a little bit. Now I'm enough. You see what I'm saying? Like to me, it's like, no, 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 no. You're so much more than enough.
I think enough is the bare
That,
minimum.
that's what I'm saying.
Problem that, with our self-talk, like,
Yes.
it is so, and we're not alone. I mean, especially I think athletes, it's so natural for us, because we're
Totally.
sized so much,
Yeah.
like for different things, right? But it's and also if it's a part of our upbringing, like it's so easy to slip
Yes.
that and to train your self-talk to be very negative,
Yes.
but
Yes.
think about the word enough. And this was within my growth. Enough is the freaking bare minimum.
Right?
The bare minimum. If you're like, oh,
Yes.
I'm able to breathe enough. I mean, if you start
Yes.
using it in a sentence, you realize
Yes.
literally the bare minimum. So how can we get above that, And so that's what I've learned. So love
Yes.
caught on
Yeah.
to
I agree with you so much because if you say I'm not enough, you go way down to the basement. You're way down there, right? But then you say I'm enough, and I'm like, if you let's say you just say that and you don't really believe it, I'm enough. You're like you don't even get to the surface yet. And so I was feeling into that word today. I'm like, man, I need another word because I am enough doesn't feel like that's filling my soul or my soul is letting me know that's resonant with where we're headed. Do you really think about and feel into that word you're using before you use it? Because it literally could be the thing keeping you stuck. And it could be that simple, but you're the only one who has a relationship with the word that way. So you got to check into it. I can't tell you that. The guru down the street can't tell you that. So it's an interesting deal.
It's so true. And words hold so much energy and power. Like a lot of times people are like, oh, it's, sticks and stones may break my the whole saying. It's like, no, words have real power and they stick.
Totally.
To me, they're like they penetrate, in ways. And so I'm like, I
Yes.
have gotten, very, very, very intentional about what I say, but still showing up authentically. And so I always say I won't apologize for the words I use because I'm extremely intentional about words
Nice.
I say, but
Nice.
always apologize for the delivery, like if it offended you, like always
Yes.
apologize for that. But it's so intentional because I understand the power of words, and how much. So there's certain words I don't even use within myself. So like I'll give you a quick example.
Mhm.
But I don't like when I'm sick, I don't say I'm sick
Totally.
because my body can hear me. And so, I might write it in an email if I have to, cancel a call or something or, do something, but I won't say it because vibrationally my body can hear it, And so,
Totally.
yeah.
And that's the funny thing about it. Energetically, are you really even sick? Or is your body adjusting, shifting, reframing, whatever, so that you come back and you're thriving more than you ever have before. And you needed to go through that for that. And again, another misunderstanding of how we look at things. And again, for me, it's like there's a vibrational reality and there's a physical reality, and they're living with each other all day, every day. But if you don't understand the two and the way they're, weaving together, then again, life gets super confusing for you. And so that's part of the foundation.
Such a programming, right? That we're so used to. So
Yes.
that's where, Doug and I are talking. It's like it's so important to spend time with yourself,
Yes.
unlearn a lot of that programming,
Yes.
relearn your programming to be able to understand what works for you, you
Without
know?
a doubt. Without
Yeah.
a
Oh my goodness. Well, what's next for you? The last
doubt.
365 have been putting in the work. I love it. But what's next for you?
Totally.
Taking
So
clients.
Yeah, so one-on-one clients, I'm growing that out to a degree. You know, for me, I'm very deliberate about my life these days based on where I came from. I chose to leave baseball to create as much inner and outer freedom as I can. So I'm deliberate about it. So how I see the vision of it is some one-on-one, some group. I'm creating an actual 10-week program as we speak. I'm piloting it right now. I'm halfway through with it with a few people. It's been amazing. So I'm doing that. Soul Integrate Athletics is still in the works. I still have momentum there. It's slowed down some. I don't know how much I'm going to dabble into it or not, but I'm waiting for some data that's coming out where, we piloted some things with some professional soccer teams. So waiting for some stuff to come back there. But I'm just like I'm letting it unfold. I'm letting it come, trying to be as nice to myself as I can. Yeah, I definitely I want to be on as many podcasts as possible. I want to spread the word. I want to be in service. And so that's the main thing for me right now is collecting myself, understanding that I'm in as good a place as I can be, so then I can go be in service of others. So I just kind of keep doing that relationship and seeing where it takes me.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was such an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. Blessing Sunday Soul Day. I feel so energized from this conversation. Thank you so much
Awesome.
and really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, Damesha, I really appreciate you having me, and it's been a pleasure for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Everyone, as always, have an incredible Sunday. And do us a favor, leave us your favorite comment or something you learned down in the comments below. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We appreciate you. Have a great Sunday.